Welcome to today's meetup. This is part of our partner series. Georgina is presenting on the hard lessons learned from recommender systems. She will be sharing her experience and everything she's learned from her years working with recommender systems and building them. I know I'm really looking forward to this session. The session is being recorded and the recording will be available on our YouTube. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Matt and Georgina. Thank you.
Thanks, Madison. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Matt Hindley. I am Chief Executive of Exidian. We're a proud partner of Ecosystem. And a friend and guest, Georgina, has kindly joined us. She's joined us before. Before I introduce Georgina, I'd like to introduce the idea of the recommenders. We talk a lot about them because Ecosystem has a phenomenal real-time recommender, and we go to market with this. And if done right, like the team with Jay and Ecosystem, you will find yourself doing things that you didn't realize you were going to do, like buying products that you weren't shopping for, or doing things because, and I think Georgina spoke about this in a few episodes back, frictionless AI. It kind of happens in the background. And because it's this frictionless, so easy, we just take it for granted on how hard it is to do. And Georgina's been involved in building recommender systems for Woolworths, for ShopRite, and for 22/7. And I heard the story and I absolutely loved it. It's a really great story on how hard and how tricky it becomes, because it's not about just dealing with messy data and integrating with legacy and difficult systems. It's also dealing with executives and people that think they want to do things in a certain way because data presents itself in a certain way. One of the banking clients we work with at one stage had a next best offer page where it had the 3 products that you should be taking next. And because executive politics played a role, if you open the app, there's the next 25 best products you need, because all the other CEOs weren't getting their recommended businesses pushed onto it in front of their clients, which kind of defeats the object. So we know how tricky it is to get this right. Georgina's going to take us through her story. I hope you all really enjoy it. What we probably will do towards the end is we'll stop for some questions. I've got 1 or 2 questions, and if I don't chew up the rest of Georgina's time because she has a really hard stop, we'll open to you guys to ask some questions. I have no doubt you've got some questions around Georgina's story. I'd like to introduce Georgina properly to you for those of you who haven't met her before. She is the head of data, a friend of ours, a friend of Ecosystems, and a guest on the show. She's a leader in the data and intelligence space, and we're really glad to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to talk about a potted history of several recommender projects that I've worked on. I'm going to focus on the South African stories because I think they're more relevant. Most of those stories relate to groceries, so this is a heavily groceries-themed presentation. The name of the game will be me trying to avoid saying the exact names of the clients that I was working with, so wish me luck to mask that correctly. Let me share this slide deck. I gave this presentation at DataConf recently. I put it together for them. It turns out I've got a lot of stories about building recommenders. But as Matt said, a lot of the experience was ShopRite, specifically Checkers, the 60/60, and Extra Savings. I was on that team. And then Woolworths and some of their vouchering programs. I worked at 22/7 for 3 years, and that was interesting, looking at credit card data, actually all kinds of banking transaction data. And we built a restaurant recommender out of that. I do work with recommenders now in my current company, Zedge, and I can explain what that company is, but the majority of this will be South African and fairly groceries focused. Does everybody see my first slide there? Am I successfully screen sharing? I am not.
No,
not yet. I'm not screen sharing at all, am I?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm going to solve that problem. I wonder if I can. Do you see anything? Presentation is starting, it says. That's not good. All right, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to refresh and rejoin.
Madison, this is where you tell us a joke.
I have nothing to recommend on my side. No jokes. Rob a
But
load.
you got no jokes to recommend.
I recommend you to tell a joke that you haven't told before.
Oh, my vast experience of joke telling in front of an audience. I'm just trying to take up some dead air so that I don't actually have to say a joke. Unfortunately, I've been watching dad jokes, and I don't think
Oh
maybe
dear.
they're
Already
appropriate.
gotten.
Okay, thank goodness Georgina's back, so I don't need to.
You'd already gotten to dad jokes?
Yeah, we didn't do any of them, so don't worry.
Oh no.
Jay just joined and he'll think, what's happened? I'm actually telling dad jokes now on the webinar.
I apologize. I have a fancy microphone, and when it's plugged into my laptop, sometimes strange things happens with meetings, and I don't know why those two things are related, but the correlation's strong. Okay, back to recommenders and the preface I gave you. Cool. So this is mostly strange stories. This is who I am when I have cooler hair. It is somewhat cool at the moment, but it used to be cooler. I'm a self-taught coder, a former data scientist. I've been in leadership now for about 4 years. My code is rusty. This is the company that I work for called Zedge. It's a wallpapers and ringtones app. And we do lots of different things, sounds and alarms, wallpapers. If we don't have a wallpaper you like, we let you make one. We've got a lot of categories and collections, a huge bank of tens of millions of images and sounds. We are quite a big app, though I know we're not very famous in South Africa. So it's more than 600 million downloads, 500 million downloads on Android alone, very big iOS app as well. Our two biggest territories would be in India and the United States. So those are the two big ones. Mostly talking about what looks like a shopping list, because each of these items relates to a story that I need to share about recommenders. So we start with just recommenders. In the context I'm going to talk about them, recommenders are looking at a person and the things that they buy. One individual will buy apples and milk, not orange juice, carrots, yes, not wine. So there are things that you do and you don't buy. There are other people in this world, and they do and don't buy off of the same list. And you can start to see patterns like two things that are not bought together very often, two things that are bought together very often, and people who exhibit the same buying patterns. Those are the key parts of information that I'm talking about. So what you end up with is finding a group of other people who are a bit like you in that they buy a lot of the same things. But you also get a group of items. There's the items you buy, and then items that are strongly associated with the items that you already like to buy. Looking at those two things and your most recent baskets that you've checked out with, we come up with a personally ranked list of recommendations of the things you're likely to buy. That's the pure definition of a recommender system in this kind of grocery space. There are big questions about that list of recommendations for you. Should it be the list of things you're most likely to buy? Should it be the list of things you're most likely to enjoy? Should it be the list of things that we might be able to persuade you to buy? So the strategic objective of your recommender system really changes what that list is. But for our purposes, think of the system like this, which is why I'll now talk about tinned tomatoes. Your users, when you release a recommender, are oddly invested in what the recommendations say about them. They're looking in a mirror when they get the recommendations. And you can deploy a mathematically correct recommender system that your users will hate because it's just not how they see themselves. I built a restaurant recommender when I was at 22/7 based on people who went to the same restaurants I did, according to their transaction data. What other restaurants did they go to? I found Starling's Cafe that way, and Starling's is awesome. I also found a bunch of places in Linden, which was amazing when I went up to Joburg. It was an awesome recommender system. But it recommended to my friend Sam, and I don't know who here is Cape Townian, but there is a very hipster coffee shop called Power and Glory. And it recommended to Sam that she go to Power and Glory. And she said to me, I built a terrible recommender system because it said she needed to go to Power and Glory. She's not that kind of person. She felt she wasn't that kind of person. And she strongly felt that my recommender system was weaker because it was telling her to do that. How dare your system say I'm that kind of person? Usually then saying that your system is a poor system. So you can find yourself in an oddly emotional discussion with your users of the recommender system based on what your system is recommending, and it might not have anything to do with the strengths of the mathematics at play.
You also need to make sure that those recommendations are in line with the relationship you actually have with your end user. I did some work on a recommender system for the fanciest grocery store you can think of. It was a voucher program. They were sending vouchers to their beloved users so that they would love and shop more with the very fancy store. The users didn't like the recommendations. They didn't like the system. They said it was a shitty system. They said it was, not high quality, and the recommendations were poor, and the vouchers were not great. And when I had a look at it, the uptake of the vouchers was very low. They were recommending choice grade tinned tomatoes, 10 Rand off. The data scientists working with it said to me, why do they hate it? It's a strong recommendation. They definitely buy these things. Why is it getting such bad feedback? It was a funny moment because I looked at him and I thought about my experiences with this store. I'm like, your relationship with this store as a person who shops there is not about choice grade tinned tomatoes. I feel like everybody who shops at this place is shopping there to make it clear that they are better than other people, like richer. They're definitely richer than everyone else. Or some people are like, they've got better taste than other people. They know the difference between single origin Italian olive oil and an olive oil blend. So they're much more aware of the quality of ingredients. They're more ethical than other people. They have the organic single origin Tanzanian coffee beans that are kind to orangutans. They're a better person for those reasons. They're a better person than everybody else for shopping at that store. Great tomatoes just isn't part of that romance. It's not something you think of a rich person buying. It's not fancy from a culinary perspective. Why do you think I need 10 Rand off choice grade tinned tomatoes? Do I look like someone who needs 10 Rand off my choice grade tinned tomatoes? It was a clangor in terms of the relationship they actually had with their users. So the intentions of the recommender system didn't quite match up with what a good experience actually looks like for a user and what a successful experience is for the user as far as the business is concerned. Did the business want this recommender to make users love them, shop more with them? What was the intention and how do we make it match? In combination with recommenders being a mirror of the user and the user becoming emotional about what the mirror is showing back at them, you need this to be in line with the relationship you actually want to have with the user. So yeah, tinned tomatoes, watch out for those. Onto soy mince. Soy mince is an interesting one. Soy mince is a vegetarian or vegan product. This is a lesson in how intimate this data is. Your credit card transactions, which I had huge access to at 24/7, that's some incredibly intimate data. If someone has access to all of your financial transactions, they've got a really big picture of your life. But it's also true of groceries. If I can see all the groceries you buy and all the brands and the prices you pay and how often you shop, I'm really looking at your whole life. It's a bit like letting me into your home and letting me look through all of your cupboards. It's exceptionally intimate data to have a full picture of someone's groceries. Even so, in the company I work at, the ringtones and wallpapers you choose to put on your phone, consider what some of those aesthetic choices say about you. A fair amount of our content is religious in nature. There's a lot of Christian wallpapers and things like that. But also consider if you're a user sitting in Pakistan and you choose or browse the wallpapers that involve maybe a shirtless man, this could be illegal in your country, maybe. And it's a spicy thing to know about somebody, that their aesthetic tastes run that way. So in almost any situation where you have enough data to build a recommender system, you have enough data to get into trouble by knowing too much about people, having too much of an intimate view. In all the recommenders I've worked with, we've touched on each of these elements of data highlighted in green. This list, if it's familiar to you, is the list of special categories in GDPR. These are types of data that require incredibly special handling, incredible secrecy, privacy, protection. You're not allowed to just throw these into an algorithm. And I have come across every single one highlighted in green there in my work in recommenders. Because your groceries can have something to say about your racial or ethnic origin. Consider what color of foundation you bought might say something about your skin tone. If you are buying soy mince, you have a philosophical or political opinion about whether it's okay to eat meat. Also kosher food, halal food, These things hint at your religious beliefs. Any of these grocery stores that have a sort of pharmacy aisle opens us up to some stuff about your health, or whether you choose low fat or low cholesterol items. It is health information. And what you choose to buy in the personal health section also tells us some stuff about your sex life. So it's unbelievably intimate data to be able to look at someone's groceries, and you have to treat it with that level of care and secrecy, which I'm not sure everybody does when they think they're just dealing with a recommender for milk, eggs, and bread. There's a special warning that I have, which is don't keep lists of people. I know that the intentions are sometimes good, like wanting to get a list of maybe some of our Jewish customers so that we can wish them a happy Jewish New Year. The Rosh Hashanah was last week. Wanting to do that from a fairly good-hearted place, a marketing place, but a fairly good-hearted place, but be able to target those people for that. It's really unacceptable. The rule of thumb that I always say, and I've had to say it in nearly every business I've worked in, is if you find yourself keeping a list of the Jews, you have really gone astray. You can't keep a list of people who you think are Jewish, no matter how much you would like to just send them a Happy New Year email. You can't keep lists of people, period, for whatever their demographic attributes are that you might have figured out from their shopping habits. It is ethically, legally, and statistically way safer to rather let users self-exclude themselves from certain things. You know, if somebody really doesn't want to be marketed alcohol, it is a much better idea to give them the option to filter that out on the app itself. Just a slider button. No alcohol for me, thank you. You could also offer no pork. You could offer any of the things that they want to remove from their experience, and you design your recommender to handle that elegantly. And if possible, try store those settings on your device itself. Try store that on the phone locally. Don't let people make those choices and then store those choices in your database. So again, ethically, legally, and statistically, you are way, way safer. It's way safer to let them tailor how your recommender speaks to them by changing settings on their actual device at the last moment before your recommender speaks to them. It's way better that way. I have generally pushed back against collecting gender data in order to make recommendations. Nearly everywhere I've worked, executives have said to me, but Georgina, we need gender. We have to collect gender. Imagine if, and then they pause while they think of the worst thing that could happen. And then they say, imagine if we marketed tampons to a man. And I have an opinion on this, which is recommending a tampon to a man is not a bad outcome. It's not a bad outcome. That is not on its face a bad outcome. Recommending tampons to a woman who will not use them for whatever reason, if she's aged out, if she will never use them, she has no use to them, she's had a hysterectomy, whatever it is, that is a bad outcome. You've then gone and put tampons on your list of recommended items, and it's taking up real estate on your list of recommendations, and it will never be sold to that person. You have wasted a valuable slot. Wasting those slots is an absolute crime in recommenders. That is a bad outcome. Failing to recommend tampons to a dad who buys them often for his teen daughters, that's a bad outcome. You've missed a sale because a dad could benefit from a reminder. This is a very bad outcome. But the worst outcome is that if you're going to ask or try and estimate and store gender and open yourself up to a world of the regulatory and ethical hazards of storing gender so that you can do a bad job of selling tampons, that's a very stupid situation to put yourself in. I have enjoyed not having to worry too much about some of the ethical issues and some of the legal issues around data storage and algorithms, because I know with great confidence that I'm not playing in those fields. It is so much better not to try and play with gender. The only thing that matters is the propensity of this user to buy the product. Gender is an old world construct for that. You have access to much richer and more nuanced data about whether someone does have the propensity to just buy that product. Gender comes from a time of Mad Men and Don Draper, where that was the best information they could get to try and guess. It's an old heuristic. It's the old world. And it's very worth letting go so that you can focus better on the more nuanced signals. And now we talk about turduckens. I did find in my talk that a lot of people didn't know what a turducken was. So I'll just say what a turducken is. For a while, Checkers was punting them quite hard. I think Woolworths did them as well. It's like a chicken inside a duck inside a turkey, which is a very medieval feast situation where they would also put it inside a swan, inside a peacock or something like that. So it's kind of like this medieval feast concept, but they've gone a bit more sensible now, where it's not actually a physical bird inside a physical bird. They kind of do it with a meatloaf approach. So they get a whole lot of chicken meat and a whole lot of duck meat and a whole lot of turkey meat. Anyway, it was a Christmas thing. It's kind of expensive. You use it for a big meal. Yeah, it's festive. Pets die. People get pregnant and pregnancies fail. And January comes. And it is worth designing your recommender to have a very good approach to forgetting. It's pretty crap to log on to your groceries app and have it sell you dog food if you abruptly do not have a dog anymore. It is also commercially wasteful for them to do that. Dog food and pet supplies can take up a huge amount of space in a recommender system. If it shouldn't be there, you need to use that space for something more likely to sell. I have had the uniquely unpleasant experience of trying to get Discovery to stop sending me pregnancy updates, pregnancy products, pregnancy bonuses when I had a pregnancy that wasn't there anymore. These things can be very hurtful. And we should design what we build so that it's not hurtful. It is an edge case for this to be hurtful, but it is part of letting people help you design a recommender system that will work for them. It's worth being able to turn things on and off, especially special categories like baby stuff, dog stuff, and swimming pool stuff. It's good to be able to switch those on and off. And it's also good to notice when someone has dropped something from their habits and have a short enough look back window that falls off and you let that go. Maybe someone's on a health kick and you stop recommending them Nutella. I know that would have been helpful for me at certain points. So what does this practically mean? You need to get into your data and flag the seasonal inventory. Turduckens are heavily seasonal. There's nothing worse than trying to sell a turducken on the 27th of December. The festive feeling isn't really there. Lord forbid you're trying to sell that turducken on the 2nd of January. You need to get it out of your feed. Even if it's off the shelves, you need to persuade your recommender to stop looking at that turducken. So flag that in the data table. If you're lucky enough to have several years of data, which I did, if you're lucky enough to plot that over time, your seasonal inventory announces itself to you. You can find it in the patterns. If you can make contact with your buyers or the people adding new inventory, talk to them about seasonality as well. But get that well flagged. You cannot waste your higher level slots in your feed on stuff you don't want to be selling that won't sell. Set your tight retirement window for behavior data. Be forgetful about people. In groceries, that's a pretty luxurious position to be in because people do shop quite frequently. If your product has a much longer buying cycle, this might not be viable for you. But if people are coming quite frequently, be forgetful. Look at who they were recently. You should pay some attention to recommendations that could be hurtful to people. Offer your users a way to opt out whenever you can. A classical issue for a lot of my friends who didn't have kids was that they would go to someone's baby shower, they'd buy one packet of nappies, and then that was the top third of their recommender systems for the next couple of years, was more nappies, which they were never going to need, never going to buy. You're wasting your own time putting those recommenders there and not letting someone opt out of those sensibly. So yeah, it's good to be forgetful. Cucumbers are fascinating. Every groceries retailer I've worked with has told me about the amazing cucumber, the most popular thing in the food store. My God, cucumbers, they're so great. I have watched people build campaigns around cucumbers, and this was before the viral cucumber salad TikTok thing. It's a mistake, and I can explain why. Cucumbers are the rock star of fresh produce 9 months of the year. 9 months of any given year, cucumbers are right at the top. But it's a lie, and it's a lie for a data reason. Cucumbers are a very consolidated item. If you go to the shops, how many types of cucumber can you buy there? It's one, or maybe two if they've got a big one and a little one. So all cucumber demand goes through 2 SKUs. But if you go by milk, that is split by a lot of SKUs. So there's huge demand for milk, but it's flowing through fat content, brand, size of bottle. That smashes it into a whole lot of different demand things, and then it never quite rises as high in your rankings of popular products. This can mislead your algorithm. This can mislead your popular recommendations. It's an illusion that cucumbers are the most popular thing you have. They're just an example of condensation of demand into a specific SKU or pair of SKUs. This is applicable across a lot of industries. It's really not just about cucumbers and groceries. You need to consider whether SKUs, form factors, item pack sizes are diluting. You will need to make sure that you're not creating the milk bottle browsing experience, where because each of these types of milk is quite popular in its own right, the first 5 scrolls of the popular feed is slight variations of bottles of milk, which is not a great experience. So don't let a consolidated product like a cucumber dominate your popular feed. Don't let a fragmented category like milk be all anybody is scrolling through for days and days and days. This is where I usually recommend that people talk to your product manager about what good looks like. I know they're not a data scientist, but if you get them to mock up what the app and recommendations should look like, you'll notice when they mock it up, I see you've got lots of different items. You know, the thing I built that is mathematically correct, it's a lot of same items. I think I've built something mathematically correct that is not what good looks like. It's worth having active conversations with your product manager about that vision. You should be measuring the category diversity on your feed, on your popular ranking. Does your popular ranking straddle enough categories? Or are the first 5 slots Coca-Cola in different bottle sizes? You can set impression caps per category. Coke is allowed to be in the top 20 twice. Everything else for Coke takes a penalty and has to appear further down the list. Talk to your product owner about what good looks like and test your product as different but real users. I haven't seen people do this enough. It is worth, as a data scientist, experiencing your own algorithm. We're very lucky, if you're working in this kind of field, to be working with human experienceable data. If I'm measuring the wobble variance of a high-speed turbine, I don't know how to experience that as a person. If my algorithm affects that, I don't know how to see if it's working or not. But you are a human who buys groceries. So go out and experience your own algorithm, but as different people from just yourself. This means build into your product design, your prototyping design, personas who you can be. I'm going to be Mrs. Smith. Let me scroll through the app looking at what it's like for Mrs. Smith. She's a fake person, but base her on a real person. Go into your data and find people who are real. Don't try and identify them, but find them, load them up as a persona, and experience your recommender as 10 different people so that you can get an idea of what someone with low information versus high information, someone who only buys fresh products from us, someone who never buys fresh products from us. Experience it as different but real users. It's very eye-opening. Coffee and Biscuits is a fun one. Everything you need to know about a person is pretty much available by their choices in the Coffee and Biscuits aisle of a grocery store. If you think about the last large store you went and shopped at, there was a nice big aisle full of coffee, tea, and biscuit choices, right? It's in nearly every store. It's even in the corner shops. Coffee and Biscuits is what I would call a high-resolution selection space. Think of these as pixels on a pixel map, and these are all your options in Coffee and Biscuits. People will choose something from that aisle and tell you where they are in the coordinates. Nobody goes to the shops and doesn't buy coffee, tea, and biscuits at some point, right? Even if you experience a significant financial change in your life, you don't usually stop drinking tea. You change the tea. You change the coffee, you change the biscuits, but we still buy them. This means that nobody ever really retires from this space. And the second thing is, we buy there quite regularly. It's not something you buy once every 5 years. It may be true that everything about who you are is also contained in what dishwasher you bought, but I don't get to see that very often. I get to see this very often, and it tells me a lot of things about how much you're willing to spend on something that is a pleasure, kind of not a necessity, but something you'll definitely buy. It tells me some of your health considerations if you're getting lower fat biscuits, if you're getting the green tea latte sticks, whatever it is. A lot of those attributes, choices, lifestyles are in here. How much you spent on a coffee making machine, because there are some pretty arcane coffee machines out there. And if you're buying pods, that tells me you've got one of those pod machines. A lot of stuff is in there. So basically, purchase is virtually mandatory. Very few people make a shopping trip without buying something from that aisle. You have an enormous number of options. That aisle goes on forever. It's all 5 shelves. There's so many different things. So there's a huge space for you to show me what you value and how you identify. You buy pretty often, so I get to poll you pretty frequently, and your class and wealth and health and culture and lifestyle are kind of baked in there. I'm sure a lot of people on this call might have said a sentence at some point to someone like, oh, we weren't really a Trinco family. We were a 5 Roses family. It's funny how that's kind of a cultural touchstone, what kind of tea you were drinking. But way stronger than that is something that I noticed fell apart when one of the big retailers I worked with brought in a recommender system from overseas. So they brought in one of the major UK retailers had a pre-trained system that they were able to bring in and apply to their own stuff. And it didn't work so great in a few ways. And one of them was about trying to figure out wealth levels. And this system was designed to say, if you buy no-name brand, like the store brand lemon creams, you come from a low-income household. And if you buy Tim Tam's greatest biscuit ever, particularly with the double chocolate variant, you have lots of money to spend on luxuries. So high disposable income, willingness to treat yourself, right? And that meant you were wealthy. But this algorithm completely fell apart when someone bought both of them. It didn't like that. If you were buying the Dough Egg Burts, I hope I'm saying that right, but also Ricoffee, it didn't know what to do with you because you were giving opposite signals. In the UK, they don't quite have the same pattern we see in South Africa of madams and maids behavior. I bought the Tim Tams for me. I bought the lemon creams for you. We have quite a few situations where someone of quite substantial means buys both the very high-end item and the much more low-end item, because in this country we have a lot of employers of domestic workers, and there's this bifurcated basket. A UK-trained algorithm didn't know what to do, so we had to do some tweaking. But yeah, Coffee and Biscuits is a very revealing aisle. I've just told you that class, wealth, health, culture, all of that is really baked into Coffee and Biscuits. And I feel like someone from marketing might be in this meeting and say, awesome, I know what I'm going to do next. And I'm really hoping you don't, which is, given everything I just told you about gender, I'm really hoping you don't look at the Coffee and Biscuits aisle and say, that's it, I'm going to pull people's wealth and culture and lifestyle out of their choices, because that would be creepy and wrong and ethically questionable. It would also be really ineffective. When I say that those things are baked into that aisle, they're baked in. You can't necessarily pull them back out again. You can't say that someone is like a middle-class Benoni Afrikaans family drinking Trinco. I don't think you can pull that out of there. And I think it's a weird thing to try and do as well. You'll be wrong most of the time. You'll be prejudiced the rest of the time. But I can tell you what you can do with a high-frequency selection space like Coffee and Biscuits, which is blind groupings. And this is what I did do with one of my biggest recommender systems, which really helped me partly with parallel processing, but it really improved my results. Take those choices out of an area like Coffee and Biscuits and use them to create little blind tribes of users who are quite similar to each other. And don't name those groups. Don't try understand it. Don't try figure out who's Afrikaans or middle class or English or wealthy. Almost like don't bother, but split it into a lot of groups. I used 20 for mine. I had 20 different tribes. And what I did was I then filtered down the recommender system and ran it 20 different ways. And I got some really nice fitting results. Using these kind of blind groupings is an excellent way to grab a non-health conscious vegan group who likes to spend a lot on tea. It's a bit of a micro niche, but they do exist. I know a couple. It turns out French fries are vegan. So you really can have a non-health conscious vegan. Oreos as well, beautifully vegan. So like you can live on French fries and Oreos and buy some elite tea bags. If you use blind groups, if that's a meaningful group, they'll all be in a group together and you can get very good. I was vegan for 1 month and I still bear the scars. It was good though. Use it to make blind groups. Use those groups to run models separately if you've got enough data to do it. And you can end up with a really snug fitting recommender system on groups of people who are very similar for reasons you haven't tried too hard to understand, and that's a good thing. Don't give these groups names. Don't call them the yuppies or the health freaks. If you do that, the moment you start giving them these marketing style names, you're polluting your own insights. You're starting to form assumptions. You get biased on your own and you start making strategies around these groups. Let the recommender do the work and let the statistical similarity be the reality. Blind groups got me a lot of good places. I'll quickly recap. Recommendations are a very emotional dialogue with your user. Be ready for those emotions. Whether that's just knowing as a data scientist that people are going to have feelings, knowing that you'll have to have some way for people to tell you about their feelings, about what you recommended to them, and that you might also have to have the ability to discuss that well with them when they confront you. You might also need tools to manage some of those emotionally triggering recommendations. Your data is very sensitive. It's ethically fraught, even if it's just groceries. If you have enough data to make a recommender system, you've gotten pretty intimate about someone's life. Traditional demographic information that the marketing team always wants. Sorry, I'm being very down on the marketing team. I do love them. Sometimes they can get a bit obsessed with traditional demographics. They are a distraction and often a problem for the statistical fit of your model, for your intentions, for the strategic goals. Never keep a list of your customers by their ethnicity or their beliefs or by most things. It exposes you to an enormous amount of legal and ethical risk. Life is a lot simpler if you don't, and you can handle the need for those lists in a smarter way. Don't keep that list. Flag your seasonal inventory, set a good forgetting horizon for people's behavior. Let people opt themselves out of categories. Don't keep selling diapers to somebody who just bought them one time for someone's baby shower. Please don't. That's wasteful of your own real estate. Don't harvest people's choices as data when they opt out of categories. You'd be opening yourself up to sensitive lists of people. Store those customizations on the client end on the phone. Watch out for your consolidated or fragmented categories. Don't let cucumbers dominate the top of your list just because they go through 2 SKUs. Don't let milk be the milk browsing app on your groceries app because it's so fragmented. Handle this by measuring your feed diversity. Use boosts and caps to maintain some decent feed diversity on your popular feed, and find what your high resolution selection space is in your industry. Where do people have to go make a selection from a very wide range of things that can tell you quite a lot about a person's lifestyle or choices? What's your high resolution selection space? If you don't work in groceries, use that to figure out your blind segments. If you don't have a high resolution selection space, maybe you can make one as an app experience where people can make a choice that tells you something about them. And there's a lot of options. You could try and make something like that. So yeah, that's my advice related to several grocery items. And I'm happy to say, Matt, I don't have the hard stop I usually have. Today's one was cancelled, so
Dang.
I'm around.
A great talk again. I can see the hand clapper things going on. Thank you so much. I want to kick off a question and answer session. I do know that the ecosystem team have the tech section after this, so I want to direct a few questions at you. You've been building these recommender systems for quite a long time. There's quite a lot that's changed, and we watch the AI space changing significantly. Amazing things like real-time machine learning, behavioral science recommenders have been built, products like that you could now use. If you were put onto a project right now, greenfield, to build a recommender, what would you do differently?
In the grocery space or in the app space? Actually, I can probably say a few things. A lot of the recommenders I've worked with have been on very classical techniques, things as basic as collaborative filtering. I enjoyed those because it was very parallelizable. It takes a lot of data. It has some challenges. It's a pretty fundamentalist algorithm, but you usually knew why things were happening. I think a lot of the AI-driven and agentic systems, I like them because they are blind, the way we want things to be blind. So the black box works for you in that way, right? So we're not trying to harvest demographic details. We're letting a blind system shake large numbers of people into little groups and find them good recommendations. So that part of it is absolutely lovely. I would definitely go for that if I can find an economically sane way to do it. You never want to deploy a solution that costs so much per recommendation that it's never going to add up to the marginal uplift in sales that you were going to make. So with an agentic or AI system, I would definitely want to build in breaker circuits. If it picks up on some kind of pathological pattern, which could be statistically true, but perhaps reputationally awkward, I would want to have a set of breaker switches that I can throw that throws our recommender back into safe mode. So if it started pathologically recommending lots of bacon to people who buy Kiddush wine, kosher wine, right? I don't know why it started doing that. You can't ask it why it started doing that. Often you can't stop it from doing that. You might have to do some retraining. But the most important thing is to have some breakers you can throw that send the recommender back into safe mode. And whether that safe mode is all pork is off now, all booze is off now. That's one version of safe mode. There are others. Runaway robot.
Cool. How important would the capability of real time be for you now? Whether it be in groceries or a financial loyalty platform?
Real time's a big deal, depending. Pre-pandemic, when I was working on groceries, I had a 24-hour cycle time, which is very luxurious. I was dealing with brick and mortar groceries, and people generally did not shop more than once a day. I didn't have to reshuffle recommendations more than once a day. Real time has a very strong role to play the moment someone's not shopping only once a day, and the moment the context shifts what they need. Again, working with something as large as Checkers, you're looking at daylight hours only. You don't have to be aware of evening context. It wasn't at that time incredibly important to upsell or recommend things differently to someone at 9 p.m. Whereas in nearly every other business, yes, you do. You need to see their momentum of browsing. You need to see their momentum of buying. You need to assign them exploit or explore, depending on whether they look like they're killing a bit of time or whether they're needing to get something done. Those kind of contextual things are where real time really comes into play. I haven't had to deal too much with those, except via some business rules, but real time recommenders are when they're important, they are very important.
Awesome. Anyone in the audience got any questions for Georgina?
Has anyone had a bad recommendation lately?
Well, I always think about this, and I don't know if recommenders go this far back into history. There's always that story about the father who found out about his pregnant teen daughter from Sears. They used the data and sent emails. He had access to her emails. He got really irritated with him because he said, please stop sending my daughter stuff about babies and diapers, because
it was about the coffee consumption in the house had changed. I believe it was the coffee is one of the harbingers. For sure. Pregnancy is an interesting time in groceries. Everybody changes everything they buy during pregnancy, and then after. It's one of the very few times you will actually change, for example, your toothpaste brand. It's one of the reasons it attracts huge scrutiny from retailers. They're desperate to know because it's a moment of change and cross-sell and upsell. I believe the change had been in the pattern of coffee buying, amongst other things. They were probably using a fairly blind system. Those coupons were being sent accordingly. The spicy thing about the story is that they were correct.
Yeah.
And the guy didn't know, which is interesting. Messing with the maternity area recommendations is dicey for a lot of reasons. Kudos to it. Again, oddly emotional dialogue with the user. Yeah. Be ready to have the conversation with them if they're angry or they're offended. and have breaker circuits.
I just wanted to hand back to Madison, and a huge thanks to you, Georgina. It's such a great talk, and thanks again for sharing it with this group.
Thank you so much, Georgina. Oh, hi, David.
Hi,
Do you have a
Madison.
quick?
Sorry about my appearance. I'm still recovering from hospitalization. Thank you, Georgina. I found some of that quite interesting. In fact, I found it all interesting, perhaps some points more interesting than others for me. I've chosen my own approach when it comes to recommenders, which is something I've been doing for a while. I haven't had your commercial success yet, but that hopefully will be coming down the line relatively soon. But how do you cater for anonymous users? In fact, I don't need to know a single personal detail about anyone that uses my recommender, which obviously has lots of benefits. How do you cater for this so-called cold start? It interested me when we touched on real-time training. It's not an issue I face, but I am interested in people that are challenged by that.
Cold start hasn't been too much of a problem for me. So working with a brick and mortar groceries retailer and building a recommender for their delivery service and vouchering for their loyalty service, it's not strictly speaking a cold start. We had plenty of training data identifiable by a hashed credit card number, but we don't know that upfront. I usually like to solve cold start with a very, very light touch survey. As you start, a few big panels you can touch on your phone or in the web experience where you dial on and off a few interest areas. That has been the best solution we've found across several different industries, from a financial services app to groceries areas, and even the group I'm with now, very light touch selections gives you a better tailored popular feed that they start interacting with, and you're off to the races. Cold start on the items is a different area. So cold start on the users is one area. I've had some success with embeddings to create similarity to items that are warm already. Embedding that against new items warms up those items by induction. And that's how I usually warm up items.
That's quite clever. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for helping.
It's an idea that's out there in the wild. You can have it.
Thank you so much, Georgina.